how many years have you been doing the fest?
I think this was my 6th year.
How did you first find out about it?
Good question. Oh my gosh. I think that somebody had just given me your general Slabman column thing, and I saw it on there and decided to try it out. Because I really didn't know anybody in Bellingham at that time who was in the fest.
Judy Kleinberg.
Well, I know her now. I mean, I knew her after a few years, but not at the beginning.
Huh. What attracted you to the fest in the first place?
Well, I was looking for that push to give me some inspiration to actually sit down and write, and not have an excuse not to do it, you know. And it really has been that, I've found.
I've got to go get a glass of water. I'll be right back.
Sure.
Woo.
I wonder if my chair is too high.
Well, you know, if you tilt the angle of the, you know, the screen, then as long as we can see the top of your head, yeah, right. That's good. Tell us how POPO augments your own poetry practice.
Well, I think with just my own practice, most of the time, I'm not one of those people who sits down and says, I'm going to write at this time every day. And so I waited a lot of times before, just for something to do, some sort of inspiration to happen, and to write from there. And I found that that's not always the best thing to do, especially if you want to work on something and get better at it. So this was, like I said, this, you will sit down first thing in the morning and you will write, and it could be, and I found out that it could be about anything. You know, it could be about a line that I read in a book. It could be about the front of the postcard. It could be about what the day looks like outside the window. And that was very helpful to me to realize that, yes, you can sit down and practice your writing. And well, let's face it, not everything turns out to be a wonderful poem, but a lot of times there are some great lines that come from what you just sit down and write, and you can build on those later.
Take us a little further into your method. So in the past, you described yourself as more of an occasional poet, and with the charge of writing 31 poems in 58 days, it's really hard to maintain that. So I appreciate your letting us know about that. But draw us a picture. You sit down at your desk, you have the list of your 32 names, yourself included. You got your stamps nearby, you've got a drawer full of postcards or whatever, and then what happens?
Okay, so I have a big envelope full of postcards that I've gathered in different places over the years. And some of them are some books of postcards that you find in bookstores. Some of them are from flea markets and things where they just have racks of postcards. I don't make my own postcards, although that's an intriguing idea to me. I haven't tried that yet. Some of them, if I go somewhere and I see something interesting, I'll pick up a couple of postcards. So over the years, I've got a big fat sort of big brown envelope full of postcards. So what I do is I literally just stick my hand down in there, don't look at what I'm pulling out, and pull out a postcard. And then I look at the front, and is that going to give me an inspiration for the day? Or not, and I kind of go from there. Sometimes it has to do with what's on the front, Sometimes it doesn't. It just kind of depends on what comes to me. A lot of the time, lately, because I've been a very autobiographical poet in the past and written from more negative emotions, and I'm not in that place anymore. So it's been kind of interesting because it's like you need to broaden yourself a little bit. Always wished I was a political poet, but I haven't quite been able to get into that. I try, and occasionally I do okay, but that's kind of where I would like my poetry to go now, more in a and still definitely autobiographical, what's important to me that's happening, but more of a social justice type bent rather than just a, you know, an emotional, a pure emotional thing that was where a lot of my writing was coming from. Certainly when I was younger, because I've been writing since I was in middle school. So.
Is there any correlation between your move from gloomy Bellingham to sunny Arizona? And yeah, you're nodding. You know where this is going, don't you?
Right. Well, most of us who live up in the Great Pacific Northwest have a little bit of that SAD that we suffer from, and I certainly had some of my more negative emotional relationships with men up there. I am newly married, not quite 3 years, and we decided to move. He actually lived down in Arizona before and said, really, this is a place to go. This is a place I call home. You will like it because it's so much sunshine. And I do. I know in the summer up in Bellingham, when it's sunny outside, it's great. Down here, it's sunny almost every day. You don't necessarily get a suntan, but you can go out and enjoy the sunshine. And that does make a lot of difference to my emotional makeup, for sure. I tell my kids that I'm in my Southwest phase, and I won't be painting flowery vaginas, but I'll be writing poems about them, like Southwest artists.
And there's nothing wrong with that. You had issues with some men in the Northwest. Is there anyone you need me to rough up a little bit?
Oh, I wish I'd have talked to you earlier, but things are okay now.
Growing up in Chicago, from a very early age, we were taught a simple method, which I'll tell you in another Zoom interview.
My husband is from Kankakee, Illinois.
Like Myrna Hecht, the poet laureate of Vashon Island.
Really? Okay.
I always think of Steve Goodman's City of New Orleans when I hear the word Kankakee.
Oh, for sure. I thought that was great that was actually in that song, for sure. And he worked in Chicago a lot, so he kind of knows the Chicago thing too. He would rough somebody up if I needed it too.
Probably so. Having one Chicago guy in the house comes in handy.
Uh-huh.
So you say autobiographical things about your life. You're alluding to issues, gender issues. What are some of the main themes in your life as you see coming through the process of writing postcard poems?
What do I want to write about now?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, you say that it's autobiographical. So tell us a little bit about your life, some of the things that we may not know about you that have shaped experiences that have shaped what you write about. What'd you do for a living, for example? What did you study?
I taught middle school for 27 years. I was a special education teacher in the 7th and 8th grade, and I've always thought that was kind of redundant because every middle school kid I know is a special ed kid. So that's what I did, and I have some wonderful poems that came from my experiences with those kids too, for sure.
Do you send bonus cards out up above and beyond the 31 you have to send?
Not usually. However, I did respond to the young lady who was asking if people would write her a card because she was having a hard time. So I did write her one. I felt that that was a brave thing to do, to ask for support like that. And I feel like I've been there in my life, and I wish I would have had something like that too to ask for. So, but normally I don't.
What are 3 things you love about the project?
I think writing to people from all over. I haven't had enough international poets. I've only had Canadian, I think, one to England one year and one to India, maybe. So I would love to have some more international. There are some people that they seem to have made some pretty good friendships through the fest, but that hasn't been my experience. I recognize names, but I don't always, I think I don't always get in the same group. Sometimes those people that first join on are kind of, they seem to get a lot of the same people in their group, and write to them back and forth. But I like the experience of, how many are from the East Coast, how many are from, in the South, how many from the North. And I like that idea of it. And it kind of gives me that positive feeling that poetry is very much an alive art, where for a while, at least when I was younger, I wondered if anybody really read or wrote poetry anymore. But this just shows me that yes, indeed they do.
Are there any online or in real life space communities, poetry communities, you think should know about it, should hear about it?
Well, the ones that I was most associated with up in Bellingham are now in the group, I noticed. And to be honest, moving down here to Arizona where we are, I haven't had much opportunity or luck yet in finding a group to belong to, which I really miss, because I did have a pretty good couple of groups that I worked with a lot up in Bellingham, and I miss that community, that writing community up there. So personal knowledge I don't have of a group that I would encourage to join that's not already in.
What advice would you have for someone who's considering signing up for the fest?
Oh, just do it. I actually had a friend of mine who does not consider herself to be a poet. I talked her into joining one year, and she didn't do it again because I think that she put too much pressure on herself and didn't consider what she wrote to be poems. But that it wasn't true. It wasn't true. But she did love getting the postcards and the poetry from other people. And I also think that seeing the variety of people and what they write shows you maybe that you are a poet. You do have that. You do have poetry inside you, because they're so different. There's poems on the back of cards that I swear would take up 2 typed pages. I don't even know how they get that on the card. And then there are other poems that are a line long, and they're all wonderful, and they're all poetry.
Do you have a postcard poem that you'd like to read?
I do. It's in my journal. It's not on a postcard, of course, because that was sent. And it has to do a little bit with being down here in Arizona in heat, when there's a lot of building going around where we are right now. It doesn't have a title. It's just number 15. In this excessive heat, men walk in jeans, long sleeve shirts, handkerchiefs flowing from under caps like Arabian princes, gloves and heavy work shoes protect as they shovel, lay pipe, drip systems for desert plants, lucky enough to find a home in this yard. To what yards do these men return? Like auto mechanics who own no working cars, like preachers' daughters pregnant and alone, like plumbers with no working bathrooms. Does an oasis for them await?
Wonderful. I'm
Thank
grateful
you.
for your inspired participation in the Postcard Fest, Karen.
Well, thanks, Paul. It's nice talking to you. And we've had, conversations over email for years, off and on, little bits here and there. It's very nice to see you and speak to you face to face. Thank you for the opportunity.
I'm grateful for your time.